When?
All right, good evening. Welcome to Axiom Flux, episode 4, season 2, 19th of November 2017. Tonight we're going to be talking about, or the topic is decimal day.
And it's season 4, episode 2. You got it back to front.
Oh, sorry, season 4, episode 2. I wrote it down wrong, perhaps. Never mind. This is what happens when you get to my age. Anyway, it's about decimal day, which took place on 15th of February 1971. Well, I think you've got to be maybe in your 50s, I would think, at least, maybe mid-50s to realise what that was about, or understand perhaps what it was about. Because I think if you was only 4 or 5, whatever, I don't think you would have known. So it's kind of a topic for the not so much for the elderly part of the generation, but I think it's quite valid that we hear opinions and thoughts from people of that age group. And I'm glad to hear tonight we have one, that's me, Stan, and also we got Black Old Bridger, as he likes to be called. We'll say good evening from first. Evening, Paul.
Good evening, guys.
How you doing? All right?
Fair to middling, me old mate.
Right, yep, fair to diddling. That's good enough. Also, we've got, I don't know how old Tower is, but
34.
Sorry?
34.
34. Well, that's not quite in the bracket, but you never know. You may have done a lot of studying and probably know more about it than us, but you never know. Anyway, good evening, Tower. How you doing? All right?
Yeah, sorry if I'm quiet, I'm just a bit busy, that's all.
All right, mate. Well, I don't want to keep you too busy, but do pipe in whenever you like if you've got anything to say about the topic tonight. And we've got PJ, who's basically the engineer tonight, but I'm hoping to tease a few words out of him now and then. So you should at least say good evening, PJ.
Evening, guys. How are we all doing?
Yeah, all right.
I don't know much tonight, so I'm not really a contributor, but I'm fascinated and, willing to listen in, and hopefully I think this will be an interesting talk for quite a few generations out there, not just for your generation.
Well, hopefully we can fill in a few blank spaces or give people some idea, if they haven't looked at this separately, or encourage them to go and have a look and read a bit about history, because without history, or his story, as a lot of people say, or her story, yeah, fine, we get the point, but, it's still days that are past, and I still think a lot of people that are alive today who live through these events, is worthy of their thoughts, if nothing else, especially people that, are pretty, don't really have an agenda, don't work for governments, don't work for authorities, etc., etc. But anyway, we don't have to prove anything. We don't have to justify anything, do we? So anyway, it's just a topic about decimalisation, or decimal day, as PJ's put it as a title of the topic, which occurred on February the 15th, 1971. I remember it. I've not got no script, as always, and I don't approve of scripts because, people can write scripts for them, can't they? So this is from what I experienced, and I can remember it it's very vivid in my memory as I was approaching my first year at senior school. And I noticed from the day, a few months before and a few months after, the results on the ground as a very young teenager going into teenage years, the difference literally in my pocket was at the time, and very shortly after, much more the difference if you sort of bear with me. But you could get X amount from a shop in old money, and all of a sudden you had to deal with this new money and see if you could get X amount. Well, as it turned out, as all these things do, by changes of monetary systems and governments and all the rest of it, at first people really didn't see what had happened, because the sleight of hand you know, they seem like it's a good thing. They always bring it in, and it's early few months or early 1 or 2 years. It doesn't seem like a bad thing. And this is what they done, because you could go in a shop, basically. This is how I noticed it. With a one old penny, you could get something like a penny chew or some bubble gum or something like that. And then after decimalisation, you went in and you got this nice shiny new penny after a while, and it was smaller and didn't quite feel the same. But hey, look, I'm not bothered. I got 2 chews for that penny. Well, to me as a child, that was a good deal. So it seemed like a good thing. But obviously, only being around about 11 or 12, you know, you don't really know a great deal then. But, you know, enough to notice that there's a big change. One was the weight in your pocket. If you was a working kid like me who used to go out and do jobs and get his own sweet money, nothing from parents, from me, I had to go and do it myself, cleaning cars and things like that. But anyway, long story short, this was okay. This was okay for a while. And then after a while, all of a sudden you could only get back to the 1 penny, 1 chew or sweet for the penny. That happened quite rapidly, if I remember rightly. So all of a sudden, this good deal sort of went back to pretty much what it's like, for the exchange of 1 penny for 1 penny. So
and yet, Steph, the new penny was the value of 2 old pennies.
Allegedly, supposedly. Exactly, Paul. So, anyway, this went on for a while, and you grow up, and another year goes into a year. But as those years went on, all of a sudden, that penny bought you nothing in a very short time. In a very, very short time. So, basically, I'll let Paul let you talk about the actual currency that we had and how it was divided up in pounds, shillings, and pence, and all the I'm not going to use that word. I hate that word, derivative, but there we are. All the different denominations of the coins that you had, and what was involved with. What it had been swapped to was, to me, was a very simple system, which people go, well, that's a better system. Today, people say, well, I don't know how you got on that whole way of how you used to count things and money and all this business. But basically, you had 200, before decimalisation, you had 240 pennies in a pound.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it was. And I'll just give you a very, very early one bit of history about that. That all came about. Paul can probably put it back to the other denominations, back to the Roman times, to the denarii and the rest of it. But the Anglo-Saxons, the idea of that was you had 240 silver pennies, which is all they had in their currency at that time, which came out as a pound in weight. That's how, you know, they done it. But I'll leave the rest for Paul to explain, as he's better at me. But,
well, I don't know about that stuff, but I will try my best to see whether I can supersede your explanations. Anyway, first of all, the weighment of currency was done on the scales, which is known as a Libra. As in the Libra, the scale was star sign, which was for weighing currency. And later on, it changed from Libra to the Libra Ponda, which then became, which is known as the old sterling pound. Well, the pound sign used to be an L, a capital letter L, which then stylized itself into a nicer stylized fashion pound sign as of today. The currency was originated from the Roman times, where you had a penny, which was a letter known as D, and that D was denoting the old Roman coinage of the denarius. Yeah, and that is the penny. So you had pounds, shillings, and pence. But the pence was marked up as D. not a p like as in the new decimal currency. It is now known as pence and not penny or pennies. And then you had the solidus, which was also another common currency. And for one solidus was more or less the cost of a cow or sheep, and that's why it was so commonly used, and that was commonly known as the shilling. And the name of the shilling was quite pan-European, denoted a nomination, and that because it was called a shilling, it was S. So you add all together pounds, shillings, and pence, which was LSD. And there was a bit of wordplay on LSD, as you may have heard of. You might have heard about the Beatles record called Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, where they were singing about LSD. But that was about the same time as this conversion to the new decimal currency was taking place. And in the pound, you had 20 shillings. And each shilling, you had 12 pennies. So therefore, if there was 12 pennies to every shilling and 20 shillings to the pound, you ended up with a grand total of 240 pennies per pound. And back in 1969, they weaseled in the new 5p piece and the new 10p piece, because the 5p piece was the equivalent to the old shilling, and the 10p piece was the equivalent to the old 2-bob bit. Bob was another name for a shilling, and or a 2-bob piece was also known as a florin. So 10p now is the same value as the old florin, and a shilling now, a shilling of then is now the new 5p. And the reason the 5p and 10p, the reason it was given, were brought in because it was an intermediate stage for getting people used to the new, real good decimalisation currency. As Staff was pointing and deluding towards was how we've all been a big rip-off, and how we've all been ripped off, and how the standard of living has completely dropped since they brought in the new currency. And the whole idea of the new currency was for getting us into the EU. But we're talking about the currency, so I won't go into a low diatribe on the EU. So I'll pass it back to Staff now to give us a bit more of his enlightened wisdom. So if you'd like to take the reins, Staff.
Yeah, well, there was one or two other coins in there, like 2 and 6, half a crown. And
I can explain them if you wish.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. Well, you had a half a crown, and a half crown was known as 2 and 6pence, which is known as 2 shillings and 6pence. So the 2 shillings will be 24 old pennies. Yeah, and the 6pence will be 6 old pennies. So all told, you'll have 30 pennies to make up the florin. Does that work out correct with you, Staff?
Half crown, I think, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I said florin, didn't I? Please
yeah,
forgive
but listen, I'd only just thought, well, hang on, we got the 2 and 6, we got the half crown and the crown.
Yes, the crown.
So, you know, I thought I'd add them into the mix. So,
yeah.
What seems quite to people today, if they've never heard this in their life, if they do hear this in their life, but it sounds very complicated. But then you see, in those days, it wasn't complicated. Along with a lot of other things in those days, you had to think about what you were doing. And you know, it wasn't a case, I don't think, It's all to do with the culture and how we've evolved in time. But the monetary system hadn't changed for a very long time, and the silver penny was. If you're talking of England here, the silver penny was the first coin for English, and that was introduced by the Saxons. But the earliest penny is a Saxon skeeter, which is a penny, which is a form that actually they used to was actually on the near continent, and beyond academical history and academical belief, especially along the south coast, the southwest coast, and the east coast. This island done a lot of trading with the continent, even during the so-called Dark Ages, much more than they would like to lead you to believe. And one of the earliest coins was the Anglo-Saxon or the Saxon skeeter, which is a penny, and it was had inscribed on it mostly runic alphabet and runic symbols and runic language and letters and things. So that's something else if people want to look into that. But that's the earliest penny that was here. That was made of silver, and it was much smaller than the later Anglo-Saxons hammered silver coinage. But again, people can look into that side. Very few people look into the what they call the period of the Dark Ages because they can't find too much literature about it. Well, in my book, there's a reason for that, and it's not the reason that it was, a complete breakdown in a sort of societal form of way, or it was, the sun went away for 200 years and all this rubbish that's so I think there's a lot of investigation. I don't see much investigation. There is some, but it's quite scant on the internet about that period, because the only written record that really came about was 200 years later by a bloke called Bede, who wrote about it after everybody had become christened and made into Christians by St. Augustine via Rome, but also by St. Patrick, an earlier saint who was in England long before the Roman church chap came along. But that's another story, and we're diversing from the decimalisation, so we'll leave that there. But the whole thing about the decimalisation, as Paul has just mentioned, it was a complete destruction of the currency of the past colonial empire of Britain, the British Empire, if you want to look at it like that. But that started way before that. It started way ago, before the just before the First World War. Again, that's another thing. I might get PJ to pop a screen up in a minute if he can do that. And it's just a Wikipedia about the pound sterling in general, and there's an interesting graph at the end that I'd like to show you, and show you exactly how the power of the pound has disappeared over time. And the reason for that is, I have no doubts, it's because it's the destruction of not just a currency, but of a culture, of a people, and everything, by certain people who want to control everything in their one globalized vision of how the world should be. Let's put it that way. So, I don't know if you've got that, PJ, whether you could pull that up at all on the screen.
Yeah, that's up that.
Right, let me just, because I've got to do a couple of things here, because I'm a bit in the dark. So I've got two computers going, and it's a bit of a hodgepodge at the moment. Hopefully next weekend we'll have this sorted out. At the moment we're quite limited in what we can do, because I had a PC that went top, and there we are. It's insane. But anyway, if you go, I may have highlighted these. No, they're not highlighted themselves. Yeah. What I say about about the Anglo-Saxons, Anglo-Sax penny, if you go down the page and it'll say Anglo-Saxon, and it'll pretty much tell you what I've already touched on, how the 240 pieces of silver to a pound in weight, and the pieces of silver were a silver coin. So that's what the Saxon. You go down the page, PJ. I can't see it here, obviously.
Yeah, I've got that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what I got that from. But if you go down a bit further, to the gold standard, got that?
The unofficial gold standard.
Yeah. The use in the empire, and it says gold standard.
No. Okay, I'm on that now.
Yeah, it's just the last paragraph in there before the Bretton Woods bit. It will say that I've got to get this in the right position, otherwise you won't hear me on this microphone. But let me turn that over there. It's all a bit heat from it. It says the gold standard was suspended at the outbreak of the war in 1914. This is what I was saying. It's a little bit going back in history. With the Bank of England and the Treasury notes becoming legal tender before World War I, the United Kingdom had one of the world's strongest economies, holding 40% of the world's overseas investments. Okay, so basically, we were the reserve currency of the world. And it goes on to say, it's only briefly, but after the end of the war, the country was indebted. Britain owed 850 million in those days, which equates to 37.3 billion pounds as of 2015. Mostly the United States reintroduced interest costing the country, some 40% of government spending to try to resume stability. A version of the gold standard was reintroduced in 1925, under which the currency was fixed to gold at its pre-war peg. But one could only exchange currency for gold, bullion, not for coins. This was abandoned on the 21st of September 1935 during the Great Depression, and sterling suffered an initial evaluation of some 25%. So really, we went into negative equity, if you want to call it that, from the beginning of the World War. The world's reserve currency was pound sterling. At the end of the war, it was gone, and we were indebted to the United States. Now, we can go off sideways and we can say there was a lot more involved with that. They apparently, the UK, England, had 2 weeks to survive, otherwise we'd starve to death. And they'd done a deal with the American Jewry, Rothschilds, to get bailed out with. They sent fleets of stuff over, and then America came into the war 1917, the last year. But also an important declaration was signed, and that's the Balfour Declaration, which promised Palestine to the American Jewry, basically. Okay, so that's another part of history. But the point I brought that up was this was one of many reasons that they had to get rid of the hegemony, which was the reserve currency of England. And they'd done it in one World War. There was other plans later on which led to World War II, and there's plenty of information of what went on and who financed it and all the rest of it. And we get onto the Bretton Woods Agreement after World War II, which then ties us to the gold standard of the Bretton Woods, and America took in all the nice shiny stuff, and we dealt through the dollar, etc., etc. Right? I mean, if I would suggest anybody pull that page up. But there was one important thing in there. I don't think too many people have mentioned. Operation Bernard was a code name of a secret Nazi plan devised during the Second World War by the RSHA and the SS to destabilise the British economy. Was economic warfare by flooding the global economy and the British Empire with forged banks of 5, 10, 20 and £50 notes. You know, this was another way of them, whoever was in control of the whole game, of devaluing the currency to destroy it. Pull up that wiki page. We'll have a link for it after we've had our chat, and have a look at it and read it. It's not everything, but almost everything in there was to degrade and destroy the sterling, or the pound as we know it. Everything in there was to degrade it and disappear. Now, if you go to the bottom, PJ, there's a little chart there which is most important. Now, we're dealing back with decimalisation here, which is the topic, and I'm sorry I've wandered it from it, but I think there was a few important things there for people to look up for themselves if they're interested. And there's a little thing down there, and it says the following table shows the equivalent amount of goods and services that in a particular year could be purchased with a pound. The table shows that from 1971 to 2015, the British pound lost about 92% of its buying power. So from decimalisation to 2015, the pound was devalued 92%. Now, if you look at look at that table, you've got the dates on the left, and you can see the figure 1971. It says a pound. Now, as a kid, when I was going back to what I was saying earlier on, I soon realised that new penny, or whatever, with one new pence they called it, they actually said new pence on the coin. By the time I'd started senior school, you could get a pound for, right? A pound was worth a pound. By the time I finished school in 75, it had almost equalised again back to. So they never gave you anything. They took it away again in 4 to 5 years. And then if you read the rest, you go along and along and along. You see the devaluation. All to 2015, that's 0.0078. That's 7.8 pennies that pound in 1970 is worth today. Or should we say in 2015. So there's your reduction. So today, basically, right, what I could get years ago in 1971, just before decimalisation, or at the time of decimalisation, you know, today, the value of that pound is actually 7.8 pence. It's a bit like me buying a Mars bar in 1971, right? It didn't cost a pound, no, right? Whatever it cost, let's say it cost a pound. Today, for that same size Mars bar, you would have to cut it up into chunks of tens, and you wouldn't even get 1/10 of that Mars bar, right? What I could get for that same price in 1971. I'd get the whole Mars bar. But now you'll be lucky if you got 1/10 of that Mars bar. Yeah, that's how much devaluation in the pound since decimalisation. I done a workout, and I found out what the average wage for a school teacher was in 1971. And this is just your normal school teacher in those days who just passed the teaching exams. No special exams, university degrees, not that type of teacher. Just an ordinary primary school, secondary modern school teacher, minimum qualifications to teach. They got, in 1971, the average wage for those teachers was £975 a year. Right, £975. I put the figure of the buying power loss to that of 8% or 7 point something, and I worked it out. That teacher today, some people say I've got the equation wrong. I don't think so, because go and do it yourself. Right, this is what I found. That same teacher, to have the buying power she had in 1971, would have to be on £1 million a year. Wow. I'm open to anybody who wants to work it out and try it for themselves. But I'm not going to give you the example because I can't pull it up. I can't have my own screen tonight or whatever. But you tell me today people are better off today than people were before this whole complete globalist takeover was in its doing its thing before it got its grips, its octopuses around the British Isles, whatever you want to call it. I think you really need to go and take a reality check here, because it ain't so. Well, okay, people bought things, the buying power. We're not talking about what you can get today or what you think you get. But if people are happy with a bit of doll money and an iPhone, and that's life, then I feel very sorry for you. Because, and don't try and tell me or anybody else that you're much better off today than you ever was back in those days, because it ain't so. Go and do the math yourself. That's all I say to people. Anyway, with that, you know, I'm open to challenges on that equation, by the way, how I worked it out. But yeah, go and try and do it. I suggest that people try and work that out and say, you're completely mad, you're wrong.
Well, I don't believe you're wrong, stuff, because for the simple fact is, when I was a young lad, okay, I'm 60 now, so when I was a young lad was, what, 50 odd years ago, one parent went out to work, kept a whole family of kids, and they were big families back in them days. Most people had 4, 5, 6, maybe more. And one parent going out could keep the whole family. They weren't well off. I'm not saying they were well off, but they had a damn lot more than they be able to do today with both parents going out to work. So that should tell you just that it's doubled. Not allowing the proper calculations that staff has made. So just go on that principle. That two parents having to go work full time, and they're still struggling to keep a household, and the family numbers now are much lower. I mean, I think the family average is about 1.5 children and a dog, ain't it, stuff?
Yeah, I would say today that both parents are working, and with childcare and the rest, they're not paying for nothing. They're just paying for more debt. They're not even keeping their head above water. Because when you look at the figures, that every year, this so-called debt, whatever it is, numbers printed on a computer screen. Yes, we know what the fiat system is. At the end of the day, they ain't paying nothing off. They ain't getting anything. Because if they don't go and coat the line, and you know what, it doesn't have to be hard work. If you don't do as you're told for your little bit of benefit, which, by the way, 17 million workers in this country are all on benefit. They're all on some type of rebate, working tax credit or fiddle or whatever from the government. There's always a cutback to even people that works for you. And even those, some of them are going to a food bank for crying out loud to feed themselves. Two people working, family, not paying the bills on time, getting penalties, and then having to go to the food bank for it. That would have drove me. I mean, I was brought up hanging to grow and work for what you need, and nobody gives you anything. There was no welfare really in those days. Before that, in the 60s, I think my mother used to get a bit of family allowance for. I don't think it was all the children. There was 9 in my family, 9. But my dad worked enough to bring home the bacon, pay the bills, and some years go to the local holiday camp and have a holiday. I don't think that's possible. And have no debt, by the way. The big thing, have no debt. So the buying power is clearly there for anybody to see if they go and do their homework and do the stats and bother to do it, if they can be bothered. If people can be bothered. But I mean, you'll only get this from people like my age and your age, Paul, and because people won't believe that, where we were and where we are now in, 40 years? What is 71? What is it? How many years is that? 46 years? 7 years?
Yeah, around that mark, yeah.
Yeah, well, we can remember it because we're old enough to have lived through it.
Yeah.
And the only thing I'll say about the internet, and it's this: you can read and you can research, and you can read and you can research, But there is no substitute for actually living for it. There can never be a substitute for actually being there at the time. No way. You can read as many books, and books are fantastic. And there's still a lot more books out there to be discovered. And I'm glad people are starting to turn back to books because, you know, who puts the stuff on the internet? Who takes it on? Who censors it? You know, you have to ask questions.
Google.
Yeah. So, I mean, at the end of the day, were we rich kids? No, we weren't rich kids. We had to work hard. Physically, it was many, many, many times harder than it is today. There's no doubt about that. It physically was harder. Mentally, actually, it was a breeze. An absolute breeze. Because you never had all this nonsense. This nonsense you now have to say. The continuous bombardment about whether you could call somebody a particular colour, a particular sex, and all this nonsense. And it is nonsense. And like you say earlier on, Paul, when you said, you know, sticks and stones. Well, yeah. But now, oh, you can't say that. It's racist to say sticks and stones. It's madness. Absolutely.
For those that don't know what we mean, is sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt me.
And you know what? We knew back then what the government was really big there. We knew what was corruption, what was going on. Look, you go and check the perfumer. Yeah? If you want to pick out bits of history, go and check all what was going on. Edward Heath, everybody knows what Edward Heath was, what he was about. You know, but if you've lived for it. But we kind of knew in those days that, you know, there was them and there was us. But now it seems a lot of the millennials want to be them, want to be a state. They want the state to be them, or them the state, nanny. Or we're going to get our colours in and we'll show you how it's done because they're going to listen. No, they've got a big rude awakening coming in. That's what they believe. A big rude awakening. And we got on with our lives. We had communities, and the decimalisation was the start of the end of all that. It came in a time when it wasn't gone in the 70s, but you know, you got into the 80s, and I think the 80s was a major disappointment for everything, including music, because a lot of people I hear on here now, you don't know what music is. The 80s was that was just not really. It was just a period. That's all I can say about the 80s. But yeah, the decimalisation was the start of. But there we are, Paul. That chart shows you the devaluation, the depreciation, and the buying power of the pound in just 71 to now. Not disregarding where we were before World War One. I think that was poignant and it served a purpose to show that. But all through that period, it was a gradual erosion of everything. And now, I don't even think young kids today know what they are. They don't know what their culture is. They don't know where they come from. They don't know what to do. They have no form of community. They think they can get it through a cuddly toy with a particular political party or a basket or something. I don't know. It's crazy. It's crazy shit. But the decimalisation was part and parcel of it all. But it didn't take them long to take that little sweetie back, did it? 3 or 4 years. And then they took the rest of the sweetie off you. Took that penny chew and cut it up into not 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 piece, 4 piece, 5 piece, 10 pieces and less. You know, half a pence in there on that chart. You go and look at it. It's worth equivalent to 6.4, almost the total amount a pound was. It's ridiculous, you know. So it's not ridiculous, it's what they've done. And a lot of young people today don't know this because I don't think they can look at it the same way as us older generation looked at it. And there we are. I'm pretty much done. I don't know if Tara's still there, whether he understood anything I said. But he's been pretty quiet. They have not been listening. Anyway, over to you, Paul. I don't know if you've got anything more to say about it.
Well, basically, the conversion into the new decimalisation was the death knell of Britain. And we've been dying off rather rapidly. And also, I actually firmly believe deep from within that this was all part of putting us into the EU. So we're in one part of the 10 divided parts of the world, and which they will all join together. And this is the whole idea of the New World Order. And as stuff was relating earlier about the Dark Ages, that was a reset time for the New World Order that day. There's never no New World Order. It's the old order rehashed to how they want it.
Yep, that's it. It's a gradual creep into. People mention tyranny. Well, if what I think is going to happen, tyranny is lame.
Yeah. I mean, you get tyranny when you haven't got a proper democracy, and our democracy has definitely been defrocked. No two ways about it.
Yeah, that's just an illusion now. And
yeah.
You know, again, you know, if you don't stand up for your rights, you don't deserve them, and that's basically what people sold their rights. You know, I never thought, you know, I would have gone, nah, people wouldn't speak like that. No, you're making it up. It's the most craziest sci-fi film you've ever thought up. But to say that a generation would willingly plead and call people to their deaths to give their authority to a foreign land.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I just don't get that.
Well, all I get from it is stuff. It's treason. No two ways about it. It is outright treason, allowing foreign powers to usurp our institutions, our country, our sovereignty, and all the other little tricks and dirty little deals they do. And
Yeah.
And I'm not bothered about myself. It's our children. It's our youngsters that are going to be facing the true harsh tyranny that's coming our way.
Well, I think at the end of the day, Paul, if they're in the state of not knowing what is what, who they are, where they are, then, you know, along come a man. He will come along, or a machine. Because what I'm looking at now is totally not, I would say, bizarre. It's madness. And they will gladly walk behind him, and he'll walk straight off a cliff. Straight off a cliff.
And with AI, artificial intelligence has got no soul, no feelings. You will have to follow the law by the letter. And people say, oh, well, don't worry me, I've got nothing to hide, I've got nothing to worry about, I don't do nothing wrong. Whereas most people don't understand, from the time they get up in the morning to the time they go to bed, they have more than likely broken at least 12 laws that they don't even know about.
Oh, absolutely. All these statutes, which they, you know, there's no way the most educated man, woman, or child would ever know the whole statute book of stupid rules. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of them. There's rules on top of rules on top of rules. And nobody could possibly know them. Well, you know what? When it comes to artificial intelligence, it'll know every single one and many more. And if you move outside of the lines of any of those, you will be controlled.
Yeah, so I'm afraid, guys and girls, if you pick your nose in public, don't be totally surprised that you'll be banged away in prison for breaking some kind of rule.
Absolutely. Or the other side of it, Paul, is whatever they were grateful to have, their little marks, whatever it is, their little bits or bites of whatever they survive on, they can easily be turned off a switch of not even a switch of a button. Let's just say a switch of a command from a form of a machine or something that's become intelligent and can do these things. They'll be out.
Yeah.
You know. So I think, you know, unfortunately, I hope what I think is going to happen doesn't happen like you say. It's not about us old farts. We've been here a long time. We've seen a lot of changes happen. And it's not about us. It's about, you know, the future generations. And do I give a shit? Well, yeah, of course I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here speaking now. I'd just be, I don't know, doing whatever the rest of the pigs in a trough do. Let's be honest about it. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah, as I say, with this AI, there'll be no humanity behind it. And the trouble is, some people may say the devil's in the detail. Well, yes, I agree with that. But the demon's in the technology.
Yes, well, there we go. It's all for them to discover, because if they don't try and look or take heed of the older generation, there's a price to pay for that, and they'll find out. And I hope, like I say, I hope what I think is going to happen just doesn't come about. I hope there's enough people to put enough checks and balances in the way, because a lot of people keep mentioning humanity. Everywhere I go, talk shows, alternative media, whatever, presidents even say it. They mention humanity. Well, there ain't no room for humanity in this world, I envisage, if nobody does anything, or that nobody doesn't stand up or put something in the way, throw a spanner in the works somehow. Not talking about breaking any common laws. We're not talking about being, what's the word for it, reckless or causing damage to anybody, because that's breaking common law at the end of the day. You know, you damage things, you steal things, you do that sort of thing, that's common law. But all of it can be, anything's achievable if people start putting their minds together and start saying, no, this ain't going to be, because it's, well, just say, it's not good for humanity. What I'm thinking about, my opinion, they like to call it. I'm a bit funny about opinion, the word, because it can be twisted as professional opinion only, and that's the only thing that counts. So we've got to be careful of that, I suppose. This is the world that makes you think like this now. But there we are. Okay, all right. Oh, let's just see if PJ's got anything. Tower's gone. He's got very busy what he's doing. You got anything to say about it, PJ? We sort of rattled on like a couple of old crows here, but then, you know, we are what we are, I suppose.
Yeah, well, you know, I've got no memories of old former currencies and stuff like that as I went around back then. But that chart, looking at that chart, Stav, absolutely shocking. You know, put it into perspective. A good slap across face for me. And I, like I say, I can't remember what it used to be like, but just looking at that chart, yeah, tells anybody, any age, if you're able to, you know, work it out in your head. Shocking. How did they do it? How did they get away with it?
Well, I think we let them get away with it. I mean, I'd have to hold my hand up and say, you know, during my busy life,
No,
I was a bit guilty.
It's your baby boomers. See, no one's going to listen to your generation anymore.
Well,
no wonder why youth's out of control. They've got no one to listen to.
Well, we did. We tried our best. We tried our best. But I don't see anybody trying their best this time round. There's no good making the baby boomers an excuse. Guilty of many things in that respect, yes. But a lot of the baby boomers did stand up and make stands and got hit by police truncheons, had their heads smacked open, cracked open, broke backs, some people killed.
Yeah.
Read it. Go and check your own miners' history where you are, PJ. Really look into it and see
Yeah, I
what.
know about that. Yeah.
The biggest failure our generation's done was this full of apathy. Absolute full of apathy.
Yeah, and the other thing is, not in my defence, PJ, or whether Paul's, I'm not sure, but I wasn't of age of voting when decimalised came in. I was just out of junior school into senior school. I was 11 and 12, so who's going to listen to a 12-year-old boy, even if I knew what I knew now anyway? But we did stand up, we did try, and there's many a community destroyed. And like I say, you want to find the evidence, you just look in your back door at the mining industry. That's one of many, many examples where people did stand up, and look what happened to them.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, whole villages disappeared. Whole communities destroyed and disappeared.
I mean, like what you said earlier about that teacher having to earn £1 million a year. People today will think, well, we won't be able to afford to pay a teacher £1 million, so it's just as good that we brought this out. That's the response that you'll get these days.
Well, it's well, you've got to remember, in those days, people still had a way of standing up because they demanded it. They stood up, right?
Yeah.
And you know, today nobody stands up. They're quite content, like I say. And I'm not taking the proverbial here. They're quite content to get a bit of money from the state, get them the latest contract phone, and diddly-biddly with their fingers all day. I walk into people every day when I'm walking my dogs because they don't know where they are. They're too busy looking at a damn phone. And I see them at night coming miles away with big shining faces with the light from the ant unit. This is crazy. This is a crazy, crazy world. That can be in charge of a human being. What's going on?
Yeah. Well, one thing that rung loud with me over the last 30 years or so, it weren't just the apathy, it was this attitude, oh, somebody else will sort that out. Oh, somebody else will sort that out. Oh, somebody else will deal with that. Rather than getting together in groups and being unified, no, somebody else will do it.
Oh, I'm going to say, you can't really harm all right, Jack, because that affected everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, good talk. I'll let you wrap it up.
Yeah, well, we did. Some of us did stand. A lot of us did stand and still stand today. Still stand. And
when I was 11, Stan, and stuff, all the older people were laughing at me at the age of 11, moaning about joining the EU, about joining the common market, because it was unusual for young children to be into that type of stuff. But I was listening to my granddad, and he knew what he was blinking well on about, because everything I remember him saying as a young boy has come to pass.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost you could use the biblical record, really. A lot of people go, well, that's a load of old tripe. That's written by the controllers, the religion, and all this business. Well, yeah, okay, fine. Everything's written by them then. Everything. But you got to believe. You better believe that phone will take over your life. That iPhone, that IT piece of equipment is going to completely control you. It will actually even control your breathing one day. And if you don't do what it says, it'll turn off your heart, it'll turn off your breath, your lungs. It will get so extreme that you will have to do everything it says. Not what you want, but what that little piece of crap is telling you to do. Because they have it all in place. And again, people go, perhaps this will be a topic for another session.
Maybe.
You know, but there we are. The decimalisation, one of the many nails in the coffin, unfortunately, but people did stand up. People knew the difference. I didn't like that cheap poxy money. It was too small. It didn't feel weighty in my pocket. It's almost like the beer. The beer used to be bitter.
Yeah.
A strong pipe of beer. And now it's, what is beer today? I don't know. I don't drink anymore. But I should imagine it's pretty much brewed by chemicals for people who like chemical things, I guess. The argument is a chemical.
I mean, yeah, pounds, shillings and pence was more difficult to work out this, that and the other. But it's like anything, if you use it often enough, it comes like second nature. So that's decimalisation to dumb the whole country down.
Well, I know where they got the old 10 bob from, and that's 50p if I'm correct.
10 shillings. Do you know, I actually...
No, I mean today, what would that equivalent to today? It would be 50p, wouldn't it? 10 bob?
50 pence.
Yeah.
50. 10 bob, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 bob, 10 shillings is a 50p today, and it ain't worth nothing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely worth that. But you see, the thing is, we didn't cover the other part of it, unfortunately, but it wasn't just the coinage and the currency. We had the imperial measurements, the weights and measures, you know, from ounces and pounds. And that was even, when you look into that, just as big, if not bigger, a rip-off than what it was over to grams and kilos. Well, you know, that was another story. And it did affect people very much, especially the elder generation. They said, I don't like this money, it's not real money, it's very much like the Euro crap, you know, that crap. That crap. It is crap. Because it's not the continental people's money. It's not their money, not the people. We know what it is. It's
monopoly money.
Yes. So, yeah, they took the money out of the people, and there is no money for the people anymore. You haven't got any.
No. Right. Cheers, guys, for that.
All right, you're welcome.
Most welcome, PJ. Thanks for having us.
Yep, no problem. We'll be back next week, same time.